Hello class, a quick overview of Chapter 3, Cell Structure for your PowerPoint presentation. I do want you to make sure you are following the chapter for the PowerPoint presentations. You can do your own research as well, but I just want to give you a few pointers. Keep an eye on the objectives just to know exactly what are you going to learn from this chapter. In this, you're learning about the cell theory, how the cells were discovered, and what are the contents of the cell, and what kind of function does the cell do. So I'm not going to read the theory and all that. You can just read and figure out the answers. I just want to cover the basic structure of the cell with you because that's what we're trying to learn. So if you can take a look at the generalized overview of a cell, you can see that cells can be of different shape and size, but here you're looking at the cell membrane. Are we looking at the cell membrane? Yes, we are. So the cell membrane is the skin, the outer layer of the cell, and then inside it is filled with fluid, which is called the cytoplasm. Remember cytoplasm? The cyto means the cell, plasm means life. This water inside the cell is what gives us life, just like water inside our body. The water inside the cell is also 70 to 80%. And it has all these tiny organelles. Remember, we have organs, but when you go into the cell, it's called organelles. The organelles are mitochondria, nucleus, the endoplasmic reticulum, lysosomes, ribosomes, Golgi Apparatus. If you remember, I mentioned mitochondria. Mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, giving you ATP that helps function everything in the body, within the cell, outside the cell. The cell membrane, which is the skin of the cell, the outer layer of the skin, is also called as plasma membrane or plasma lemma. You can see the cell structure, cell membrane structure, and you see these the circular phospholipids along with these linear lines. We discussed that. This is the lipids, the fatty acids and the lipids that is part of your fats in your body. So your skin or the plasma membrane is mostly made out of fats because it prevents the water escape from the cell. If we don't have this fatty layer, the water will definitely escape through into the outer side of the cell, and the cell will dehydrate and will die. Exactly what happens to us too with having a skin and a lipid layer inside it. So you can see the structure is basically all lipids, right? The phospholipids and the fatty acid chains hanging from the top and the bottom. If you go down, you will see these pink structures that are proteins, and they're embedded in this phospholipid layer, the fatty layer of the cell membrane, and these are basically helping the cell to pass the things that we need to digest, such as glucose, proteins, and fats, to be digested or taken as energy for the cell. So it has to go into the cell. How does food passes through the cell membrane into the cell is not because of the plasma membrane, because it does not let anything pass through. So you have to use the protein as your transport channel and as an enzyme that helps to take the sugar into the cell to be metabolized and give us energy. And this is a receptor. Receptor is something that recognizes, okay, it's sugar, it can go in. But if it's something that is not supposed to go in, it will not let it pass through. So you can see how many different kinds of proteins you have that are helping the cell to move the food into the cell and be able to digest. The pattern that we create with these phospholipids in the cell membrane creates this fluid mosaic model. They're not attached. They can still move around the cell membrane, so they're not completely attached. They have ability to move around, and this pattern, the design, is called a fluid mosaic model. Cytoplasm of the cell is also called as protoplasm. It is basically all water inside the cell. When it is inside the cell, as I showed you before, if it's inside the cell, the blue color fluid that you're seeing is called cytoplasm. The same fluid inside the nucleus is called protoplasm. So all the organelles we saw in the cell is basically suspended inside the cytoplasm of the cell. So what is a nucleus? The nucleus, remember, is the most important structure in a cell that is responsible for our genetic transformations from a parent to a son or a daughter. So a nucleus, again, has a nuclear membrane with nucleoplasm, as we discussed earlier. So if the layer on top of it is called a membrane, and the fluid inside is called nucleoplasm. A couple of things I want to show you as, okay, so the nucleoplasm, the fluid inside the nucleus is containing all the nucleic acids or the nucleotides plus the sugar molecule, as we discussed earlier, is the DNA and the RNA, deoxyribonucleic acid or ribonucleic acid, the main contents of the nucleus as a genetic material. Chromatin is the building block of nucleus, and I will show you how that is explained because sometimes it doesn't really give you that description. Nucleolus is another nucleus, sort of nucleus within the nucleus. So nucleus, and then inside the nucleus there's another center place which is called the nucleolus, and it is composed primarily of the DNA and RNA proteins all clumped together in the center. So what do we mean by DNA, RNA, chromosomes, and everything? Remember, the chromosomes are basically these pictures that you must have seen somewhere as a double-coiled, double helix DNA, a chromosome, and humans always have 23 pairs of chromosomes. So what does that exactly mean? When you talk about chromosomes, remember, you get 23 pairs of chromosomes when you are born. That means a pair. You have 46, 23 from your mother, 23 from your father, and they are paired together like this. If you pull out one loop from this chromosome, a pair of chromosomes, remember 23 each, you pull out one fiber from the chromosome, you are going to call it a chromatin loop. As you open, you will see that these are discs together, tied together in a disc. This thread is tied together around the disc, and the disc and the chromatin together is called a nucleosome. And this nucleosome, if you keep opening it, it comes out as a double coiled helix called DNA. And each of these DNA has these tiny purines and pyridines, which is the nucleotides, put together, creating a genetic language of your composition. Whatever you are because of these combinations that you see between the nucleotides of the DNA. Humans have 23 pairs of chromosomes, 46 in total. One from your mother, one set from your father. The 23 pairs, one pair is sex chromosomes, which gives you your male or female genetic origin. And the telomeres are something more advanced, so it kind of helps give us the regenerative power of our life, because at the end of our life, when we are not regrowing anymore, the telomeres kind of disappear. So more of a give us a tendency of how much life we have. Mitochondria, remember, the powerhouse of your cells. It is the one that creates ATP. And it looks like this, just like a bean-shaped or organ or organelle. And remember, it is responsible for cellular respiration, meaning when you breathe in oxygen, it combines with sugar and gives you the energy that we want. Remember, we are using the mitochondria to make energy. How do we make energy? We breathe, we add sugar to it because that's our ingredient that is food for us. So the food and the oxygen makes ATP for you, which is the actual gas for our body to make our body run. And it releases carbon dioxide, which has to go back to the lungs to be exhaled out. Lysosomes are also found in the cytoplasm, and they contain powerful digestive enzymes to make sure that the cell is functioning right and is all cleaned up without accumulating any toxins. So they do store food vacuole, which is just storing extra food for energy purposes. And it is also helping in maintenance and repair of the cellular components. It also acts as a suicide agent in case if there are any dead or dying cells present in the cell that can create toxicity in the cell. They will clean the cell by committing autolysis, which is the cell suicide, and the cell suddenly it is digested by the lysosomes. Endoplasmic reticulum is a complex system which is made out of several membranes, and the major process or the major function that they have in the cell is creation of protein. There are two kinds. One is a rough endoplasmic reticulum or granular. The other one is smooth or agranular, and they're all helping in protein synthesis, which is the major function of the cells, because our body is functioning upon enzymes and proteins that actually perform all the chemical equations happening inside. Golgi apparatus are basically also called as Golgi bodies, are basically assembly system. When the proteins are created, Golgi apparatus assembles everything together, put it together to be ready and packaged together to be sent or secreted outside the cell into the blood. Remember, everything that is created inside the cell has to be delivered to the blood circulation outside the cell in order to be used and synthesized wherever it is needed. Ribosomes are the tiny granules that help in protein synthesis. Okay, so everything that is happening here is very well described in the picture right here. And this picture, the purple picture, is the nucleus. Everything outside the nucleus in the yellow is your cytoplasm. So the first thing that happens is the copying of the DNA in the nucleus, and you can see how this yellow strand is created. The yellow strand is the copy of the DNA, and this process is called transcription. Once the messenger RNA, which is the ribosome, it takes this strand after copying the DNA out of the nucleus into the cytoplasm. Once the cytoplasm receives that copy, it will use another ribosome and will have the messenger RNA strand right here, which is the copy brought from the nucleus. We have transfer RNA, which uses all the amino acids individually and copies the code. Remember, this copy here is a recipe of all the different amino acids we need to create this protein. So all of these tRNA, mRNA are accumulating the necessary beads or the amino acids to create this chain right here, which is the protein. And this process that's happening here in the cytoplasm is called translation. Centrioles are basically tiny little tubes that keeps the structure of the cell together. The different names that you're seeing is centrioles, centrosomes, and the building block of centrosome is a microtubule. And the microtubule is further subdivided into more proteins called tubulin. Cilia and Flagella are tiny organelles that help in the movement of anything inside the cell or outside the cell for the cell to propagate and perform its functions. Plant cells are similar to animal cells except that they have chloroplast. Chloroplasts have a pigment called chlorophyll that is able to use the carbon dioxide that we exhaled along with some sunlight and water. It gives us back the oxygen that we need to breathe. So that is the difference between animal and plant cell. The plant cell looks green because of the chloroplast having the pigment chlorophyll in it. That was my quick overview of chapter 3. It also, your chapter at the end also has a summary outline given to you to give you a short review of everything as how we just reviewed. And hopefully I will see all these descriptions that I have stated in your PowerPoint as bullet points. And if any questions, just keep in touch. And I will see you soon.